Good morning, everybody. My name's Kevin Uphill, and I'm the chairman of Avondale Corporate. Welcome to our webinar this morning, and thank you for joining. We've got about 50 minutes. The format today, please fire away questions as we go. We'll try and answer them. We will also do a sort of follow-up if we don't manage to get to all the questions on email. We'll be recording the webinar, so if you want to share it with anybody, please let us know, and we'll get the recording out to you and can share. So living on thin air is essentially, it's a strategy talk. For those of you who know Avondale, we have two practices. We have an M&A practice, and we also have a management consultancy practice. And my role, I sit somewhere between the two in terms of my work. And today, really, we're just going to be chewing the fat on strategy, possibly within the context also of the pandemic-led recessions. Living on thin air comes from the concept of a book, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, but also, obviously, the atmosphere is going to be quite thin with coronavirus, so we need to make sure we learn to breathe. So our main point today, pretty practical. We want to give you some ideas, if that's okay. So I'll be talking for 20-25 minutes, and then we're also joined by Peter Drinkwater, who is one of our business consultants and strategists, and Simon Ellis, who is from Clockwise, and he's a brand consultant and specialist. And we'll be doing a bit of an interview and chat with them. Living on thin air, for those of you who are business gurus or like your business strategy books, was actually a book written by Charles Leadbeater. I love that name. Hopefully we can give you some ideas to lead and beat the competition today. And it's essentially, it's written in the early 2000s, and when Tony Blair was in power. And really, he was one of the first to identify that the modern economy had shifted. The old economy was all about goods, commodities, and of course, capital. The more money you had, the more money you made. Whereas increasingly, opportunity was actually being found in the new virtual age in ideas and know-how rather than raw material. So again, within that context, we're hopefully debating how some ideas and know-how today will help you earn more money and make more money. So we ought to have a look at the backdrop. I know you read the news, so you kind of know this. Of course, we've got a recession behind, and therefore any strategy is going to be held back by that recession, causing drag, which means that we've all got to work a lot harder to create growth. But I thought I'd share this slide because I think it's quite important. A lot of people have been talking about a V shape, the COVID bounce. I have to say I never saw that. I'd always seen the U shape, and in fact, in terms of stock markets, I think we're probably going to see a W shape. They've bounced back and probably too rapidly drop back, and then they will push forward. It's going to be a long road out. There's a lot of government and corporate debt, but also people are going to change behaviours, and we need to adjust our business model around those behaviours. And I know there's been a lot of webinars about virtual working and collaboration and that sort of thing, and that's relevant. But all I want to talk about, and we want to talk about, is your business model and your business strategy within this context of slow growth. We're going to have a drop. But actually, in the last 10 years, we haven't really in the West seen much growth anyway. And I think, the sooner we come to terms with that, the easier it is to build our strategy. That's the bad news. But the good news is every single recession in the last 30 years, within 12 months, UK equities have bounced by 10%. So, recessions do only last a duration. This is going to be a bad one. But actually, the best business ideas, we think, are developed when people are operating against challenge, needs must, as it were. It's quite interesting, actually. I was just thinking back when Avondale started in the early 90s, born out of a recession. So, the best businesses are developed when the going gets tough. And it is about ideas. So let's look at some of the things that we can do. I do want to give a little bit of a sort of leadership point here. Yes, it's going to be Darwinian out there, but we can do things. If, like me, you're an intellectual, you like to stay informed, you do read the news, I just want to point out and remind you that media have a negativity bias. So it's very easy to get caught in that, and it's really all bad news, and to forget that in adversity there's opportunity. So I certainly, in this latest setback from the pandemic, have had to turn the news off. The news is biased towards negativity. It's their business model. Bad news sells. So I want to read it for the ideas, and actually that's what we're looking to do, is try and filter. So one of the things that I've been doing, and it's only a personal share, you'll find your own way of getting inspiration, but gone back to some of the classic business books, Harvard Business Review, obviously some webinars. I have to say I find them a bit COVID orientated, so hopefully today we're doing what we call a big picture webinar. And then it's the classic post-it notes, mind maps, doodles, keeping all the ideas, and then figuring it through into how it fits with strategy, and possibly getting help. But when we talk about help, we see within our strategy team two main ideas for your business in terms of how to deal with that negative and or indeed slow growth. And on the left-hand side, you can see here productivity gains is central to strategy at the moment. And quite simply, that's doing more with less resource, doing more possibly with less people in order to maintain margin. When you've got slow growth, then you've got more people fighting for the same business, prices get put under pressure, that hits margin, that knocks profit. The response is cost reduction and also efficiency. Now, this is pretty standard stuff. Peter will be talking shortly about how actually we think today the biggest opportunity there is around business process and IT. I think, we do work with cost reduction experts. They'll look at your fuel costs, they'll look at, your paper, your stationery, all of that sort of thing. But actually, productivity, if you can get the process and the IT system set up, is probably, for most, certainly services businesses, the number one play in terms of putting margin into the business against that slow growth backdrop. But the second game on the right-hand side, you see here, we're talking about business model strategy. And they're not mutually exclusive. Of course, you can run initiatives in parallel, but the business model strategy is possibly the less obvious and the hardest to get at, because it is the one that requires the most imagination. But ultimately, it's about new products, strategic alliances, territories, and also acquisitions, really clearly in terms of where you see the direction for your marketplace. So occasionally I play chess. My 13-year-old nearly beat me the other day. So I need to practice more often. But, if you think 4 moves ahead, you'll normally beat the other player in the room. And for me, with strategy, that's a good definition, thinking 4 moves ahead. And then it's looking at your business model 4 moves ahead against where your customer trends might look at. Now, that might sound a bit nebulous. I've got some practical ideas in a minute to tackle that. All of it, of course, within the context of teamwork. Once you've got your strategy, whether it's cost and productivity gains, business model changes, you've got to share that with the team. You've got to share that openly, and you've got to share it succinctly. We're not talking about building 30, 40 page long business plans at the moment. We're talking about 2 pages, 3 pages, and sharing that. One of the things that we think businesses struggle from is they often have too many initiatives and too much complexity, and it is really clear today to strip that down to simple. So if you look at the productivity gains, we think, I don't know if any of you saw that, there was a wonderful LinkedIn photo of one guy called Bob digging a trench, and then 15 managers standing around him in yellow coats. And and they were basically saying, "Oh dear, I think we're going to have to make Bob redundant." But I think the joke of it was that, hey, as a manager, you look after your job. It's the team that go. But actually, I think there's a lot of opportunity to look at your hierarchy and work out whether it is a 2-tier system, 3-tier system, and how you can reduce that. Because of course the biggest cost saving is probably within the management, and also where that is doubling up. Most organizations do have inefficiency at the management level, either in terms of the way they make decisions or in terms of lack of job clarity. Certainly in SMEs, we always raise an eyebrow. We call it culture of commercial, but it's quite fascinating how many organizations where the senior management double touch and the roles and responsibilities are not mapped out, and there are no clear job roles for the seniors. It's evolved. Everybody knows roughly what they're supposed to do, but it's not designed. And there's real opportunity there to get clear about who is held accountable for what timelines and deliveries, and also reducing, therefore, that inefficiency within that senior team. I won't talk about technology. Peter's going to talk about that, but of course, we've mentioned that it's critical for productivity. The other area, of course, we've all been looking at is our supply chain models. How can we make them more flexible? What else can we do? Do we need to change suppliers? And also putting in margin there. Now, for most services businesses, we've been doing that. We've moved to a dispersed, collaborative environment. And actually, our advice is, build the business as you intend to finish. We do not see that virtual collaboration going away. Very interesting. We were talking about some big private equity guys yesterday, and they were saying, we don't know that we're going to be going back to London for 18 months. It's not the government guidelines, but also it's the public transport. So they've got to build their business model around that whole collaborative work environment offline. And of course, there can be cost reduction in line with that. We've got a client, and again, come back to COVID opportunity. He had developed a hot desk app. He's absolutely fast tracking because they've also put in COVID tracking off the back of the app. But I think that's a really exciting product, and we're actually looking at investing it in ourselves. But it's a good example of someone adapting their business model post-COVID, but also it's a great opportunity as an app. And if anyone wants it, do shout. I'll give you the web address. There's a great opportunity to work on a more dispersed workforce basis. The concept here is if you've got 500 desks, you only need 200, because in reality, that's the number that are used in the majority of time. Cost reduction, but also that work from home, also bringing in productivity as people don't travel. But what you have, of course, got to do is think about how you're going to collaboratively work more effectively. Certainly, from an IT point of view, we're looking at designing the system around that, and actually, enterprise resource planning and systems to improve that working virtually, I think, is important. And within that, business process, simpler ways of working, more standard, and more tracking of those standards. I'm a silly example. We'll use one within Avondale. When we sell companies, we've always released the IM and then a data room when people have asked. We're actually moving to do that in a one-step move rather than a two-step move. It's going to save a lot of time. It's so simple. Why we haven't done it before? We've been a bit nervous about confidentiality and all that, but reality, we just need to clean the data rooms a little better when we do it. So what can you do where you've got too many steps in the process to be a little leaner? And I think that's all about looking for those little marginal gains in the business. The business model changes are actually more challenging, more difficult, and people we find struggle with this area, and that is ultimately because it doesn't feel like work. When we talk to the panelists, we will ask that question: why does strategy feel such hard work? But this is the imaginative stuff, and ultimately, for me, it sits around anticipation. I've written a couple of business books, and one of them called Navigating the Rivers of Cash, actually. And the idea behind that is, as leaders, we are in the river. There's a lot of white water, a lot of rocks, and possibly some waterfalls. And actually, as leaders, if you fight the river, you will exhaust yourself. So what I was suggesting is, hey guys, we need to get out, get on the side, get on the bank. I know there's a lot of white water, but we need to look further ahead to map out where the rocks are, to map the course for our river. And in that, the analogy of the river is, what's your market doing? And I think, you know, that's really important to understand where you think the market is likely to go. I call it the line of probability, but you know, it is possible, if you've got the right data and you do the right research, to take a reasonably informed assessment of where you think the market is likely to go. And I think, you know, the problem is we as leaders, we're all very focused on that operational side. There's an element of firefighting. We get caught in the moment, and we do not spend enough time going, okay, forget my business for a few days. Let's take a walk in the wilderness. What are our customers going to want from us in the future, and why? Not how and what are we going to supply, but why are they going to want that? And how do we then design our business model so it's ahead of it, and therefore we're not chasing the market, which I call push, but actually we're in pull. Customers are seeking us out rather than the other way around. And I, you know, again, it's a personal experience, but, you know, if we look at our history in Avondale, we used to spend a vast fortune in marketing. Simon will be upset with this statement, but actually we've much reduced it, because the vast majority of our business comes from recommendation. We're now in pull, not push, because we've designed a business around certain concepts of what we think customers want, and they're seeking us out, not the other way around. So line of probabilities. What is the micro data in your business telling you? What are the trends? What's the analysis? What's the macro data, the economic trends around your business? But actually, the other big inspiration for me in terms of how we get ahead of our market rather than chasing it is looking at parallel sectors. I think, you know, it's a good example, but, you know, if you were in a hotel business, you know, what are Airbnb doing, and what's the trends behind that? You know, the best ideas come outside the sector, and increasingly, you know, it's a digital age, your biggest threats will also come from outside your sector. And so that's really important when we're looking at how we can be imaginative around changing the business model. But ultimately, it sits on what new products, strategic alliances, acquisitions, or territories do we need in anticipation of what our future customers are likely to want from us driving forward. Now, look, that's two games to play. One, productivity. Two, business model, and changing the business model so it's ahead of the market in pull rather than chasing the market. This is not easy stuff, though. It doesn't, people don't like it. It's innovation. And, you know, I could call it leadership, not management, but strategy time doesn't feel like work. So you feel guilty when you're doing it. And I think that's probably, most entrepreneurs are a bit of control freaks. We like to feel busy, but the reality is smart ideas do not come when you're busy. If you ever had that feeling, you know, when you're on holiday, some of your best ideas come when you're relaxed. So I think, you know, when you've got a difficult backdrop, I just do need to remind you as leaders that, you know, fresh minds really do matter with this stuff. I put a joke up here, and it might sound a bit posh, but I've genuinely been listening to Bach and Vivaldi when I've been thinking about our strategy, and it made a difference. But, you know, if the radio's on, oh my God, there's the news again. What's that? And you're sucked in, and before you know it, you've lost that creative space. So you know, I know I'm covering a lot of ground there, and actually, you know, we talked about productivity gains in conjunction with business model changes, and you can run the two in parallel. But within that concept, of course, we need to look for flow and how we then join them up. I do also want to make another point about and particularly on the business model side, and why that is going to be so important, but also why it's it's the blue sky thinking, the creative space side of it. And I think one of the problems we as humans had, and I call it's called the zeitgeist, which is German for time spirit. We do get caught very much in the age, and again that's why I get a bit frustrated with the number of COVID webinars when it covering virtual working and furloughs and all that. Yeah, all relevant. We have to do it as corporate governance. But again, the fresh ideas don't come from when you're in the spirit of the age, because you're too caught in the moment. They come from when you look ahead. And in fact, leadership comes from an old English word, which is all about being ahead. Okay. And I think one of the problems we have as leaders is it's very easy to look just at the competition and follow them. And it's great in this virtual age, isn't it? Competition come up with a new service, you panic, and quickly you've developed it and you put it on your website, but you don't really know what it is. That's not strategy. Strategy is deep thinking about your core business model and what initiatives you need to have in that. But also within that, being aware you may need to disrupt yourself, called positive disruption. Probably the most famous example was when IBM let one Mr. Bill Gates walk off with the coding for Microsoft. They thought hardware was the future, not software, and they didn't disrupt themselves. When actually, if they'd have looked at it more hardly, they would have seen software was the future, not hardware. And actually, that's why I've been a bit contentious here. I've put the word rebels. If you're like me in any way, you're quite ego-driven. Your ideas are the best, and everyone should listen. But the reality is, right now, this is the time for listening. And it always strikes me that some of the best ideas come from the most counterintuitive of sources, the most counter-cyclical people. I had a meeting in London before COVID came down, and we had, I think it was about 12 partners in a professional practice going, we need to be more innovative. And as I looked around the room, average age 55, all white males, I said, well, look, you've got a problem here. Where's your punk? Where's the 28-year-old? And, where's the digital native? How are you going to change your business model if those guys aren't sitting on the board and bringing the ideas forward? Because, they're the future, not you guys. So we have got to embrace the naysayers, because they may be right and they may just be further ahead of you. And that's important, because some of the best ideas can come from the complaints, if you like, and the people who are kicking against the system, so that we can actually stand out. And then my final comment, really, which is, if we're looking at productivity gains, we're looking at the business model, we're trying to break, the tradition of our own perceptions of business model in that creative free space. You will get a lot of ideas if you do this right. You can collaborate with your team, workshops, all of that stuff is all valid. And the problem in the end is you probably have too many ideas, not enough bandwidth. And therefore, and again, guys, we do a lot of work, for example, with private equity. We're asked sometimes, how do they add value? I'll tell you, one of the most important things they do is they go, look, stop working on 6 initiatives. There's 2 real initiatives here that are going to make you proper money. Let's drop the others and stick with it. And again, look, I'll give you a specific example, but, Peter and I, we do the strategy work, we've got a management consultancy, and there've been some people saying, look, can you do some board groups? And we were looking at setting it up, and actually we went, do you know what? We haven't got time. It's okay. We'll bring some money in. It's not going to be that profitable. And we have, we've tied with somebody that's of like mind to run those for us. So you don't have to do it yourself. You can outsource, you can white label. So really important, when you're looking at the business in a model, is focus. And in that context, you may also need to do some lose in order to gain. You can't please everybody all of the time. So you may actually need to narrow your focus, say no to some customers in order to say yes to the right customers. So you know, there's a lot going on there, but hopefully some ideas for you. I'm going to hand over now to Peter, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the information technology and data, and then we'll get Simon in a minute on brand. We'll be quite quick, and then we're just going to do a bit of a panelist stuff, and we can also address some of your questions. Peter, over to you.
Morning. Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, everybody. So this morning I've got a couple of slides. Want to go through some ideas for you and some specifics that we've been going through over the last few months in our strategy practice around the ideas of increasing productivity and reducing costs for companies through business process and information technology. I've got a couple of slides, everybody be glad to know, on an example, which today I highlight Amazon as a core example. I then look at the SMEs in the UK and what SMEs and mid-market companies can do to change and migrate their processes in the current situation. And then I give a specific example of a case of a company that myself and Kevin have been working on in May of 2020, last month, who've really put technology at the absolute core of their business. Okay, not just a periphery, but absolutely the core of their business, to be able to increase productivity and reduce costs. Next slide, please, Kevin. Okay, so Kevin's spoken about the concept of living on thin air, and Charles Leadbetter's 2000 book. Okay, and there are many books on the same subject. That economies, companies, and consumption will be based around the ideas of knowledge, okay, and creativity, rather than just the physicality of the product itself. And this was a concept that was first put into broad practice by companies in the late 20th, early 21st century, and some notable companies globally appeared from relatively nowhere to become market leaders and world top 10 companies. Google, Netflix, LinkedIn, Facebook, Amazon are all businesses that deal with knowledge and information on a data centric. And in the next slide, I specifically look at Amazon, which is quite an interesting one, because actually Amazon, as everybody knows, deals largely with the physicality of product, but Amazon's business model is not a product model, it is an information about product model. So what have these companies all got in fairly common, all right, in terms of marketing and digital content, okay, is that they market suggestions, tastes, preferences, styles, soft information and concepts to prospective customers, and from those soft concepts they farm information and underlying data, which is their major commodity, and they iteratively go back to customers and prospects with improved suggestions and ideas, to a point at which a customer will make a buying decision. And in my section, I don't talk too much about these concepts. Okay, I call those the outward focused technology drivers, and that's something that Simon will talk about later in his presentation. But as far as internal technology processes are concerned, all of these companies put technology, IT, at the very core of all of their activities to drive up productivity and drive down costs. And in my next slide, I take a look, next slide please, I take a look at Amazon as an example, okay? So Amazon actively seek to deploy technology to drive down operational operational expense. And this is just for pure interest's sake, this slide, okay? To look at what some of the leading companies in the world are doing. And Amazon have a whole series of technologies that they've deployed in their warehouses. The first one being Vision Tunnel. And Amazon estimate themselves that there's been an estimated 50% increase in productivity compared to human sorting. And what Vision Tunnel does is it takes in all of the packages and boxes that are delivered to Amazon every day from various vendors. And instead of a human being sorting through these, categorizing them, logging them into the system, they simply put all of the products onto a big conveyor belt surrounded by cameras and scanners. And the cameras and scanners look for information on that product, barcodes, names of the product, color, size of the box, information which they already have on many, many products. And they're able to automatically categorize those products without any human being involved. When those packages leave Vision Tunnel, they're then taken through with a driverless vehicle sometimes to the warehouse locations. And as probably most of you already know, Amazon use sophisticated algorithms to dynamically put products on shelves by their use, by their popularity by customers, by their size. So there's no particular naming convention or place where a product can go. One day it may be in one location within a warehouse, the next week it may be in a different location. But it maximizes the use of warehouse space, okay, and reduces picking to pack time by ensuring that the products which are most popular through Amazon service are closer to dispatch. And then finally, or thirdly, Amazon also use dynamic routing algorithms to dynamically send human pickers through the best route through the warehouse. Okay, and dynamically means that that algorithm changes the route that a picker makes based on the information on where products are within the warehouse that day, and also on orders that are being created by customers from minute to minute, hour to hour. So sure, everybody, you know, might be saying, well, that's fantastic for Amazon because they've got gigantic technology budgets, okay? But today, you know, I have an organization in the UK that needs to increase productivity. Okay, so what can UK SMEs and mid-market companies do within their technology to increase productivity? Well, surprisingly, quite a lot. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we notice, okay, across a broad range of companies that companies can do to change is, firstly, they need to consider technology not to be another expense, okay? And that's what all of these really large progressive companies, successful, you know, in their markets do. They put information technology at the very core of their companies and investments. And when we talk about information technology, we're not talking about laptops, PCs, printers, servers. You know, those are just enablers, okay? We're talking about the very essence of how your company, okay, uses technology through the whole experience of the company, from marketing all the way through to sending products out to the door. Just the same as Amazon is doing in their data warehouses. The second thing is freshness. Data and information technology and processes need to be kept fresh. Market trends change. The way in which your competitors deal with data and interact with customers changes, okay? And you need to keep on top of those changes, all right? At the moment, clearly, there's some stress in the marketplace, and this is increasing people's desire for freshness and change within information technology. And in the next slide, we'll come to an example of one of our customers who is using this current situation to reevaluate pent-up productivity that already exists in their business. Expert capabilities. This is a core area for SMEs. Many SMEs and mid-market companies genuinely try and solve their information technology needs through either the use of the expertise of their CFO, their CEO, or maybe they've got a break-fix IT company that provides some support services for them. But in all of those cases, none of those people are particularly experts across a business in defining how information flows into a company through marketing, flows through the company to a sales proposition, and flows out of the company into products out of the door. In our experience, we've seen the need within SME to outsource this type of need with virtual CTO service, a virtual service where a third-party consultancy looks at how the whole SME's IT experience works and looks for cost savings and productivity gains. And we'll come on to those sort of examples in the next slide. Next, you need to embrace complexity, which sounds a little bit strange, but we've seen that if you look for complexity in your business, you'll find two things. You'll either find an operational complexity which can be reduced through process automation, or you will find potentially intellectual property. So the first one first, process automation. With many companies, you'll see the way in which they move information around their organization is inefficient, okay? And you'll hear people within the organization saying, that's how it's always been done. We don't know any other way around it, okay? It's difficult, blah, blah, blah. These are the sort of words you need to look for in embracing complexity in process. And probably within those words and within those processes will exist opportunity to find increased productivity. Or if there is genuine complexity within a situation, you may have the potential of intellectual property which could be protected. And finally, the thing that many small companies do not do, okay, with their employees is train their employees to use technology and train and continually train. And a lot of senior management will roll out point IT products in the belief that they're good for the business and that the employees will get why they should be undertaking these new processes, blah, blah, blah. Well, the truth is that employees, are a broad church. Some people understand and get new concepts quite quickly, and they're your early adopters. They're fine, but you need to take all of your staff with you because it's important that if you've invested in new IT systems and new processes, that everybody understands how to get the best out of it for your business. Now a specific example, okay, of all of those things. Next slide, please.
Peter, I'm afraid to steal your thunder. We're overrunning, so I'm not going to let you have your example because we need to do the panelists talk. So apologies for that.
Okay.
But I did want to, because we're going to get Simon in a minute. He's joined us as a guest. That's really helpful. So Simon, if you can turn on the video, join us in a second. But Peter, I just want to kick a point on training just for a second. In my experience, people give up too early on new technology. They try it and, they do a bit of training, but it's not deep enough. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I would. I think a lot of people see a project, they get involved, okay, at the beginning, it all looks fresh and interesting. They don't quite realize the complexities of the project, and they give in too easily.
Yeah. Okay. And also, Peter, I'm going to put you in the spot because it was my word. I used the word rebels, in terms of creating ideas. Is there such a thing as an IT rebel? Is there a
Yeah,
digital?
I think it's got to be natural. I really do. I think if you think as a normal business brain at the moment with IT, I think you'll succeed in a linear fashion. But if you want to gain differential growth, you've really got to think sideways.
Okay.
Sideways should be the new normal in this space.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Well, we're going to have some talk from Simon now on branding and marketing, and then we'll continue those questions and a general tutor pattern after that. Simon.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can see my video there. Is that? Can you see me, Kevin?
I can see you well, Simon. Oh, now I can't. You turn yourself off.
We're back on.
There we go.
Good morning, everyone. So Clockwise Marketing, we're a multi-sector marketing agency. We're lucky enough to work with large corporate and SMEs. But interesting enough, as a marketing agency, I think we launched around about 7 new products or services into market last year. So we've got quite a good take on that. How do you launch a new business into market from a marketing perspective? Obviously, we've got the understanding with brand, etc. But we find onto the next slide, Kevin. I just thought I'd give you some ideas on what we find is most important here. I can't see that slide moving on, Kevin. Oh, great. And I mean, some of these points we come on board from marketing and say, well, why is this product or service different? It's the what, the why, and the how. But marketing can help put the company in a language that customers understand. And I think that's the kind of really important key of what strategy we can add to that from marketing for the new business idea or service. Next slide, Kevin. Another thing which I think is really important post-COVID is people are craving human experience. And I think H2H marketing is a thing that is coming up in a really big way in the next few years. The point that whether you're selling a product or a service, your talk is human to human marketing rather than B2B marketing. And this should be reflected in everything you say. You're buying from a person. And I think companies often forget that. That's a good point in there. Next slide, Kevin. And I think the other point is any new innovation should lead with marketing, because marketeers can often give you the bigger picture in those ideas of how an idea can be taken to market, what sales it can bring. I think linking those business ideas with marketing and markets and sales is really important. Next slide, Kevin. And then leading on, it's that strategy that's all important. Setting a marketing strategy, how it will identify the customers and how those potential sales, what budgets are required to sell that service. Marketing can bring that to the table when you're planning a new idea or a new concept. And next slide, Kevin. And once you've got that strategy, obviously it is potentially, as Kevin's saying, going to be a rocky ride. Agility is king. So rather than having knee-jerk reaction, having a strategy in place and understanding how you're going to go to market is really important. But then that strategy, you can go back to that and change it rather than a knee-jerk. Which direction you're going to go in is really important, and it allows consideration. I mean, just some key tips there. Hopefully that sort of covers some things, but I know we're going to go on and talk more. Thanks, guys.
Right. Well, Simon, that's really helpful. I wanted to make a point, actually, because you've used the word knee-jerk. And I mean, Peter, you could join in on the chat, but I really hate the word agility because I think it means making it up on the hoof. Do you find, that people, and it goes back to my point about focus earlier, but if you think about marketing, they're just trying too many messages at the same time, and it is a little bit agile, and they're not really focused on that core proposition. Simon, do you think that's a challenge for people?
I think the key thing about marketing, I often find people don't have defined properly who their customers are. I think customer profiling is really useful, so that as part of that strategy, you've got customer profiling, so you understand who you're talking to. So when you think about changing direction, you understand why you're changing direction. You know, have your customers changed? Has your customer profile changed? Why are you doing that? Why has the model got to change? So I think agility is important, but you've got to do it with understanding.
And another point, Peter, and I think we have a question for you in a minute, which is on your example you were going to do.
Yep.
But Simon, one other point that's come out recently, and I do agree with this, and I think it comes back to productivity gains as well. We are starting to see sales and marketing fuse. And we know we're certainly having it ourselves as an organisation. We're having to wrestle with that. Historically, I think the budget was sales department, that's that team, marketing department, that's that team. But because sales are having to do all the the LinkedIn, the reach outs, and all of that stuff, we're starting to see it merge. What's your view on the opportunities and also the disadvantages of that?
I think you're right. I mean, historically, marketing has always been the fluffy side of things, how we get things that have the creatives involved. But I think it's marketing is more and more about ROI, and I think unless sales and marketing are working together, you're not really going to understand your ROI. And we find it an awful lot. It's very difficult to, as everyone knows, to get salespeople to prove ROI, but equally, if marketing and sales don't work together, marketing can bring a lot to that ROI. We're talking about funnels into dealing into sales and sales pipelines more and more in marketing. I think it's really important, but it's something everyone rails against in marketing. We find a lot of marketing departments rail against that as well.
And I mentioned earlier layer cake. So if you think about it, actually, also the other thing with marketing, finance director, marketing's got nothing to do with me. That's completely creative. But actually, cost per acquisition of client, tracking the ROI. It's also, we need to break those silos, don't we? The FD needs to understand what the marketing team are doing, and sales is the same.
I think certainly it's interesting. I talk about it brings in the whole side of IT. It's amazing how many companies we come across, both large and small, that haven't got an effective CRM and don't understand their pipeline in that CRM and don't understand how marketing connects with that pipeline. I think that's one of those big gains, I think, in the future that people could. The amount of times I say to potential clients, get a CRM or get your CRM in order. It's often very challenging, but it's a big IT project, can be, but it's an interesting part of the business.
Well, Peter, you were going to give us an example of where the IT worked. I'm not going to put that slide back, but do you want to just talk to us about it, Peter?
Yeah, so it's a project that we worked on, last month. Okay, a business insurance company in the mid-market. Okay, this is a really relevant case. Okay. 25 employees prior to furlough and 5 back office staff furloughed through the government scheme. Okay, so the business owner identified the 5 staff to be furloughed, all right, which were back office employees. And the reason he stated that back office employees could be furloughed was that he believed that the customer facing employees could actually deal, okay, with the back office paperwork. Okay, so through a necessity, all right, driven by the current situation, the senior management team have identified 5 people who possibly were never needed in the first place, and if you were able to replace them with some kind of technology, you may never need them in the future. So the solutions to this particular problem were actually not very expensive and were already deployed by the company concerned, and those were Microsoft Teams, which has become extremely popular over the last couple of months, but has been around for a number of years. So Microsoft Teams, where the client-facing people didn't need to go to site anymore, couldn't go to site anymore, and were communicating via video stream. DocuSign, okay, which has been around for quite a long time. So no need for the customers to sign on paper, do it digitally and pass digital copies of the paper around the offices. Microsoft Bookings, okay, which enabled the customer to stop that continual banter backwards and forwards between people of, oh, when are you available? Let's look in the diary, blah, 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 by basically opening up your personal diary or groups of diaries to employees so that you can automatically book meetings with people without having to go backwards and forwards. And most strategically of all, Microsoft Flow technology, which takes the digital signed DocuSign documents, which are now handled by the customer-facing employees, okay, and pushes them around the back office, the same as the 5 furlough people did in the first place. Briefly, just ending it, Kevin, okay? Right, here's the investment and here's the ROI, and this is really compelling, okay? The investment. So they had to do a little bit of processing with Microsoft Flow, which is an embryonic technology, admittedly. They needed some virtual CTO consultancy to be able to tell them how to put all that information together through their business and not have what we're terming, and has been termed by others before, islands of information. They had to buy some software licenses, which came to 27 grand, okay? Now here's the ROI. Final statement. 4 furloughed staff, retain 1 of the 5, okay, to make sure that processes are modeled through the business correctly, yielding from the 27K that they had to spend out, yielding 127K saving in salaries, which is savable over a 4.5 month period, or even before the furlough ends, okay? So in other words, the company has moved quickly, identified the cost savings and productivity through information technology and data that they already had, and the government is paying for them to do it.
It's a good case study, Peter. Thank you for that. Thank you. So, I mean, I think, it falls to me to sort of wrap up. I mean, I think as panelists, we may have one more really quick question, because we're slightly overrunning, but we'll go for it. And if you need to go, don't worry. But there's a question for me, and I'll address it to Simon and Peter. Is that, I've got it here as a summary here. I've used the word intelligence deliberately. Intelligence in terms of our data, that's important, but also intelligence in terms of really thinking more smartly about your organizational design and your marketing, IT productivity, and then sharing it out across the team articulately so that they are properly focused. Now, most businesses we meet do not have a proper business plan, guys. They're busy, they make good money, but they don't have a proper business plan. Why do we as leaders find this stuff so difficult? What's your view, Simon? What's your view, Peter? Why do we struggle with it?
I think it's interesting, isn't it? I concur. We find the same with marketing. Most businesses we come across don't have a marketing plan or a marketing strategy in place. And it seems obvious as a strategist that should happen, but then it's that working on the business and in the business, which I know from years back everyone says that's what people are least likely to do. But I mean, we find it on the marketing strategy and side of things. Even large corporates are guilty of it. But there's no plan everyone's willing to. So coming to us as a business saying our marketing's not working, really, there's nothing to judge that on, because there's no plan, there's no ROI, there's no documenting of dashboards. So that's the first thing we tend to put in place as marketing company.
I concur with what Simon says. With IT and strategy around productivity, that there is no written plan. Business owners will work, to solve situations with the point solutions, They create inadvertently islands of information, including within those islands marketing and sales, IT plans, and there's no joined up concept, okay, of how all of these elements work together holistically for the business.
And my thought is, because this takes a lot of time, you're not immediately earning money doing it. You've got people screaming at you saying, I need you, and therefore you feel guilty doing it. And actually, to me, we undermine ourselves. And Peter, we had a chat the other day about context, not content. Content is the symptom. We end up organisationally firefighting. Context is, if you haven't taken the time to design your business properly around, all the different elements we've talked about today, and it takes deep, calm work, then you're really going to struggle. So I think don't feel guilty about doing it, however stressful the environment around you is. You've got to take yourself off and put the time in to look at that. And we're around to help, guys. You've seen earlier that we do these business reviews. We're always happy to chew the fat for an hour or so without charge, but ultimately our proposition is that we can come in and review all the different elements, not expensive, and give you some direct support on it, which ultimately increasing your management bandwidth to it. So thank you everybody for joining. Sorry we've overrun slightly. We will share the recording and also the slide deck. Please, if you've enjoyed it, pass it on and get other people to listen and join in. We've also got some more webinars. These are M&A specific, so Simon won't be in on that, but you can see the dates there. But also, if you've got ideas that you think we should be covering on webinars, please do email me. We're trying to do one every 2 or 3 weeks, hopefully, as we've done educationally, so that you get some real ideas and inspiration. So stay well, and we look forward to catching up soon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
See you, Kevin.